You're listening to the Word Slinger Podcast, episode 25, Building a Publishing Empire with Johnny B. Truant.
This episode of the Word Slinger Podcast is brought to you by Happy Pants Books. Are you a coach, consultant, or keynote speaker who needs to publish or perish? Get your ideas out of your head and onto the page. Visit happypantsbooks.com.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented Pants Optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Hey everybody, this is Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. Thanks for tuning in again this week. I'm back in the studio, back in the closet, hanging out with you guys. I love doing this. Every week I get an opportunity to kind of hang out. Last week, you heard an interview with Vic Mignogna, and that was actually kind of fun to put together. I did a little something different, which was to add in some sound effects. I haven't really planned out doing anything like that with this episode. Maybe, who knows? I might sneak something in. But this week I'm actually talking to somebody who is, we'll just say he's kind of a mentor by proxy in my career. He and his two partners, he's 1/3 of the self-publishing podcast, and that is Johnny B. Truant. That guy and his partners work harder than any three guys I've known in real life. They spend so much time building their business. And they've built, first they've built a solid authority business around indie publishing and around helping people break into that industry. It's really admirable. I started following them, more than a year ago now. I had heard of them and had followed them off and on, but I started really listening to every episode of the podcast starting in like December or June. No, not June, January. In the 2012, 2013, range, 2013, 2014. Yeah. So, it's been a little over a year. I keep forgetting it's 2015 now. So, but, it's been a little over a year and I've followed every word these guys have said. They're the first to say that what they're saying is not advice, but, they're very successful at what they're doing. And so you'd be crazy not to at least attempt some of what they're saying they're trying. So you got to do what works for you, and that's the way it is with every authority business, including being an author. But it's good to have mentors, and these guys have been so gracious and so generous. And there's so many people that I have met now because of them. They have this wonderful community. I mean, it's just outstanding. A lot of some people I've had on the show, like Jamie Maltman and Michael Laron. So, Johnny, I'm honored to have on the show. I actually had Sean on the show way back in episode 13, when he talked about the necessary evils of self-publishing. So, it's kind of great to get him on. We're gonna work on getting Dave on here. Although, going by what I know of his personality, that's going to be a challenge. Challenge accepted. So, I'm not going to keep you too long. I do want to mention, thank you to the people who have started contributing on Patreon. Fantastic. I really appreciate what you're doing and that you're contributing. I'm so honored and so grateful. So thank you for helping to keep this going. If you're not contributing, that's fine. I'm always going to offer this content for free, but it's great to get that kind of support. I put several hours a week into producing these shows. So, and I'm trying to bring you the very best interviews I can. People who are real authorities in their industry, experts who know what they're talking about, can help you get into something that maybe you would like to do for a career or just give you some inspiration. So, I'm telling stories every week, and it takes time, and it's not my income. It's not what I do for a living, but I do love it. But, if you were throwing like $1 or $2 my way each month, that would be very helpful. Every dollar counts. Every dollar helps. So go check that out at patreon.com/Kevin Tomlinson, or you can go on my website, kevintomlinson.com, and that will lead you to, you can click on the Fund Me button in my menu bar. So that is it for self-promotion. And now let's tune in. Let's hear Johnny B. Truant talk about what he did to build his publishing empire. See you after the show. Hey everybody, so this week I am with somebody that, actually I'm not literally with him because that would be creepy because I'm in a closet right now, but I'm going to be chatting with somebody you may have heard of, and I've definitely heard of, and that's Johnny B. Truant, who is, he's 1/3 of the self-publishing podcast, but he's also a storyteller at Sterling and Stone. So thanks a lot for being on the show, Johnny. I'm glad you're here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kevin. It's good to connect.
So I wanted to talk to you, of course, about indie publishing because that's just what everybody talks about. And this show is not specifically about that, but it is about story, and so story folds into what you're doing prominently. So I just let's just start with what got you into this specifically. Why indie publishing?
Well, I've always wanted to be a writer. I remember writing stories when I could barely write. I used to have these big, Dr. Seuss style books, and you'd have to write a little bit about you, and I'd write a story. And so I've always wanted to be a writer. And I wrote an entire book, a novel, in 1999, before all this began, and then proceeded to shop it around to agents and get rejected over and over again, which is, of course, the way that works.
Yeah.
And, they suggest, send short stories to literary magazines so that they can reject you. And
right.
So I went through all that, and then I kind of set it aside. I kind of was like, okay, well, that was nice, and now I'm going to go about my business of actually trying to make a living, crazy. And when I knew Sean Platt, one of my business partners, of course, David Wright's the other one. And when I already kind of knew Sean from copyblogger.com circles, we sort of orbited in those circles. And so when I found out that Sean and Dave were doing indie publishing, it was kind of a light bulb moment because they were making money on it. And I said, oh, that's a viable thing. And my personality is such that when I start, I'll dip a toe in, I'll try something. And then I just go whole hog. And so it was kind of a slippery slope from there.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much how everybody stumbles into it, usually face first.
Yes.
That's how I got in. So is that first book out there? Is that something floating around that people can look at?
That is the Bialy Pimps.
Okay. I wondered if that was it.
Yeah, that's the one. Although the version that I originally wrote got a very serious edit before I e-published it, and I dare say I've evolved a fair amount even since then. Although I do really love that book still.
Do you have any temptation to go back to it and fine tune it?
No, I don't feel. Well, it would be arrogant and inaccurate to say that I don't feel that it needs an edit or anything like that, because I'm sure it does. Yeah. But that's not the dominant impression I have of it. I feel that it's done. It got its many edits. It had many edits. And I just want to write more stories. So I don't feel the need to go back and work on it. Right. But that said, I feel like I've learned some chops since.
And so you guys, and we're all very grateful because what you do is share what you're learning as you go. What made you guys decide to start doing the podcast?
Well, it wasn't altruistic. Sorry to burst anybody's bubble if you think, well, hey, they wanted to help.
All right, this interview's over.
It's over. The way that it worked was I wanted to glom on to Sean and Dave, and I say that affectionately because I did literally want to glom onto them. But I knew that what they were doing, and I wanted to be a part of it. And around the same time, I was listening to something or other, and I heard an interview with Pat Flynn, from Smart Passive Income. And right. Pat talked about how a lot of people were entering his world through his podcast, way more than his blog. And so it kind of set me on fire a little bit. And I was like, I had just interviewed Sean, and we had this interview for my blog just about self-publishing. Yeah. And I said, dude, we should do a podcast. Our interview was really good. We should do a podcast. And Sean said, well, I kind of already had that idea with Dave, thanks. And of course, in retrospect, that was never going to happen. But at the time, it seemed like, well, whatever, they're going to do it. But I moved into that with the idea of like, okay, so this is how, if I push this, if I say, let's the three of us do a podcast, then that's my way of sort of steeping in this world and masterminding with these guys. And we've said that a few times, that for all three of us, the podcast began as and remains largely a mastermind group that we let everybody listen to.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how that began, was we wanted to connect with each other and to articulate what it was we were doing amongst ourselves, because when you teach, you learn more. And it just grew from there because, hey, people liked it.
So what do you think of this proliferation of podcasts that's happening now? Seems like everybody wants one.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
It's a good way to articulate what it is you're doing. The one thing that I think is a danger with a podcast, and I don't feel like this is the case for us, but it can be if somebody says, well, should I make a podcast, is that you can end up putting more into it than you get out of it, in that you really kind of maybe should be writing. But any reason anybody has for doing a podcast, if you dig it, if it works for you, then great.
So who's been your favorite guest on the show?
Are you going to make me pick a favorite?
Well, who have you gotten the most out of when you talk to him?
I have to go with the easy answer of Ed Robertson, because we've had him the most.
Yeah.
We've had Ed on the most. And Ed is a very good strategic thinker. And I contact him offline about, have you heard this about this thing, or what any idea what we should do here? But we've had some fantastic guests, and I love them all.
So there seems like there's a thin line or a border there between you guys are indie, but where's the line between being indie and being I don't know. I don't want to say you're not traditional. You won't go traditional, but I mean, what's the next step? You're already pros, so I don't know what to call that next step. So when do you stop being indie?
Oh no, I think that you remain indie.
Yeah.
I think that indie authors are entrepreneurs at heart.
Yeah.
And if you aren't an entrepreneur or aren't willing to learn to be an entrepreneur, then you're going to have trouble.
Yeah.
Now that said, it's not accurate that we wouldn't go traditional. We would just have to know what we were getting out of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Hybrid at best.
Right. Yeah. And that was another question I wanted to ask, was like, what would be the conditions to move to a traditional contract?
We just have to know what we were getting out of it.
Yeah.
So a good example is our book Axis of Aaron, which is literary mindbender, and it's traditionally literary in that it's rather large. It has a lot of big ideas in it, and it doesn't sell as well as page-turning commercial fiction does on a platform like Amazon or Kobo or Barnes & Noble. And so if we were to, we've talked about, like, if the right deal came along, I think we would sell the rights to that book because they could probably get us more exposure. And we just have to, I think you have to know, like, I think authors go into traditional contracts if it's their first time.
Right.
And they're like, okay, I've achieved,
Yeah.
I'm going to make all sorts of money. And most books don't earn back their advance. So if they give you $10,000, then that's probably all you're going to make on that book. So we would have to know, are we trying to get attention? Are we trying to reach readers we can't get? A lot of people still just buy books in airports and bookstores and aren't into this whole new ebook fad. Those people still exist. So I think you just have to weigh pros and cons and say, is it okay if we don't make anything more than the advance because we're going to get this other benefit, we hope.
Right. And so the idea would be, hopefully, that it would feed people looking for the rest of your work, right?
Right, or cred. It's sort of a feather in the cap to say published with whoever, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So okay, you guys have a huge catalog. I think you're getting toward the level where I think even like a Stephen King is going to be a little envious of your output. So you guys produce a lot. You and I share a trait in common in that we're knocking out 8,000 to 9,000 words a day, which is awesome. But not everybody can do that. So how do you maintain that kind of output?
Well, I think that write fast, as a rule, write fast.
Yeah.
Needs to be taken in context, because we went through a period of time where we had a little bit of an identity crisis on the podcast about should we or should we not talk about our levels of production. And for at least a while, we said, well, let's back away from that. Let's talk less about word count that we're producing, because we were getting a little feedback that people were like, I don't know, a little demoralized. Like they were like, well, I can't do that. And the codicil unspoken was, and therefore why bother, or something.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to do that. And not everybody's wired to do it the exact same way. You mentioned Stephen King, like he's a prolific author. He produces 2,000 words a day as of when he wrote On Writing. And that's a lot of production. So it just, when we say write fast, we mean write without self-censoring. We mean when you're in the flow, don't stop and think, just get the book out. But if somebody can produce 500 words a day, that adds up. That's many thousands of words a year, and you're going to get books written that way.
So you have a writing partner. Do you do everything with Sean, or do you still write books just on solo?
There was a period of time. So when we started the podcast, I was the solo artist. I was the person who wrote books only by myself, couldn't imagine writing with a partner.
Yeah.
I also couldn't imagine producing as fast as Sean and Dave did. And so that was me. And then I just kind of experimented a little bit. And Sean and I wrote the first Unicorn Western book, and then the second. And after I wrote a few, I had my own series, the Fat Vampire series, which I had to finish once I started working with Sean. And I know we did quite a few projects together before I got around to saying, okay, I got to finish that, and I got to write Fat Vampire 5 and 6. And it was, I don't want to say it was hard to do, because it's not like I had been crippled or incapable, but it wasn't as fun. Yeah. And the ideas weren't as good. So I would say, well, okay, so how do I want to solve this dilemma? And I tried even a few times explaining it to Sean, like, okay, we have these people here. What do you think? And it's that banging back and forth and experimenting and just having fun with the writing that I found I missed so much when I wrote solo, that yes, I could do it. I'm sure I will do it again at some point, but I have zero desire to, because it's so much more fun and we move so much faster, and just the energy is so much better when we write collaboratively.
So Sean, I don't know, I always kind of get the impression on the show that he's almost sublimated, like he's helping and he's guiding and he's editing and that sort of thing, and he's helping with creating the story. But how involved is he in the actual shaping of the story?
Well, we both have very distinct strengths. Yeah. Now, I don't know what it's like for Collective Inkwell, but for Sean and I, for Realm and Sands, I am probably a better articulator of a story idea, and Sean is a better story architect and idea person. So, like if you lose use of an arm, it gets atrophied and little and stuff. And I feel like I might have my idea muscles atrophying a little bit because I abdicate so much of that to Sean. Like, I've just finished Robot Proletariat Season 2. What's going to happen next? I have no idea. And I don't have to think about it. And all those loose lines of like, well, this went here, and what plots and twists do we want to have? He handles all that. And then if during the middle of a project I get stuck with articulating, so just so people understand this, I work from, I might have a paragraph of an idea that's something that might happen, and depending on where I am in the story, I might use that paragraph. I might totally throw it out in terms of like, here's kind of what is occurring. And then I'll write several thousand words articulating that idea. This occurs, so okay, let me pull it out. And then I get further and further from Sean's initial beats, and there are some projects where I'm not even looking at the beats. I'm just saying, well, the characters seem to be doing this. But then if I hit a snag, I seldom just try and figure it out. I mean, I do on a micro level. But usually what I do is we have a story meeting, or if it's too tough of a knot, this just happened recently on a project actually, I will come to a full stop, and sometimes Sean has to go in there and kind of rebeat it. He has to say, okay, well, here's what's going to happen, and I defer to some other story. So we have a very handoff sort of a relationship as opposed to we create the story together, but it's like it's Sean, then it's me, and then we kind of discuss it, and then I finish, and then I hand it off to him, and we discuss the next one, and so we're very, very evenly matched without overlapping and being redundant.
Yes. So that seems to me that seems like that would help with the speed. I mean, is that part of the secret of how you're getting your output?
For sure. Yeah. If I had to, and actually when I did Fat Vampire 5 and 6, I had gotten so used to working from, outline is the wrong word for it. We do use the word story beats. So I had gotten so used to that, which I had never done before, that when I went back to it, I kind of tried to write beats for myself. And the process was quite hard. And it took me a long time. And when I have those, when basically Sean hands it to me and I look and I read something and I say, okay, I understand these people, I understand these settings, I understand what's supposed to happen, and I'll ask questions. Okay, well, that didn't quite make sense. And we have that discussion ahead of time and I have it clear in my head, then I can just zoom. But if I can't, then I stop and I think and I slow down when I get too far from the beats. And so it's a huge key to speed.
So when you're okay, so solo, what's your output like? I assume it goes down then.
I have no idea because I haven't. It wouldn't
done it in a while.
No, I haven't done it. I mean, I can write approximately as fast per hour for a rough draft, and I do produce pretty clean rough drafts. So that those are quality words. But that said, if I write, 2,000 words in an hour on Sean's beats, or I write 2,000 words per hour on my beats, that's only part of the story because I have to stop the actual rough draft writing and figure stuff out and so forth. So the extra time doesn't come in the production of the right draft; it comes in the project as a whole.
Cool. All right. So you guys have this huge audience. And I'm envious, by the way. But it seems like there's a real loyalty in the group that follows you guys. Like, how much interaction do you actually have with your audience?
A surprising amount. Well, I think that with any audience, you get people who are very vocal or very interactive. Mm-hmm. So. For instance, like, I don't know that I'd be on this podcast if I didn't know your name just from interacting.
Right.
Blaine Moore is very active. Quotidian Light is on every, podcast thing. And so these are the people that we see a lot. And I think that the interaction, people probably feel this way about your show, is there's a level of, I'll use the word celebrity, but it's so the wrong word.
Right.
When somebody's in your head all the time because you're listening to their podcast, you feel like... not just that you know them, but they're an authority.
Right.
And so I think that people feel like there's an intimacy that pre-exists to the point where we have people mess with us in a way that's supposed to be funny, but we're not used to interacting with them. We kind of go, is this person hate us or are they just playing the game? But I think it just comes from being human and being accessible. Now, I think that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who we never ever hear from,
right,
and who are really quiet and who love us just as much. But yeah, we do have some really loyal fans, and I love them for it.
And does that feed some of what you do?
Oh yeah, it every day. I would say, I don't know necessarily every day, but a lot of days, like 6 days out of 7, say, we get emails that are basically thank you emails, and when you get that, it's kind of hard to be unaffected and not feel like, okay, so that was worthwhile. Like, right, we're doing something worthwhile. So it definitely fuels us in that way. And the fiction fans fuel us in a different way, just that, hey, you dig what I wrote. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know, in some ways that's a bigger ego boost for me when people compliment my fiction.
Oh, me too.
So how do you build an audience like that? What's going into that kind of nurturing?
Well, you need to get them onto your home turf. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know that this is going to cross a little bit into like strategy stuff on the podcast and stuff, but we recently did, was it our last? No, it was 2 episodes ago. We did how to use Amazon instead of Amazon using you.
Yeah.
And so the idea was, I think a lot of authors have sort of abdicated marketing to the fact that Amazon is its own recommendation engine and its own ecosystem where with certain books, you can kind of put stuff up and then it sells.
Right.
And so we always say, well, don't rely on them because Amazon could decide to stop selling books. Like, I don't think that's going to happen, but Amazon sells a lot of stuff.
Right.
And it would be, they could easily say, no, no more books. And so then you're screwed. And so I think that building an audience is the same way as you should approach something like that. Whereas you can just broadcast, you can essentially be on somebody else's platform or no platform where they're just kind of passive. But once you start interacting with people and you're building, you probably knew where I was going here with the email list, right?
Yeah.
So once you start building a list, then you're able to reach out to those people directly, and they're no longer the captive of another platform that can change the rules on you. So we just try to be human. We try to interact with our emails. We try to communicate. We try to send emails, and we talk to people directly through our podcast, like this.
Yeah. So you guys have grown quite a bit in just even the past year. I mean, I came in maybe December of 2013. Listening to you guys. Actually, I had listened to you off and on before that, but I really started tuning in around that time when I decided to take my business seriously. And you guys are growing like crazy. Like, how do you handle that? I mean, now you're at a point where you've got folks working for you. You've got, all new systems in place. Like, what are some of the headaches of growth?
Well, it's that there's a lot of stuff. So here, this is probably a good example. We're redoing some of our mail. Well, okay, so we are doing some of our mailing list, like autoresponder stuff we should have been doing from the beginning, where people automated emails when they join the list. And as part of that, I was putting up a mailing list bribe, basically, like, you get this, and when you join the list. And so I had to rewrite a product description because I needed it for the bribe. And I didn't even bother checking to make sure the categories are right on this. I updated the description on Amazon, but I said, well, I'll have to get to Nook and Kobo and everybody else later. And stuff like that is constantly falling through it's falling through because we can't, I just have to do triage. Okay, so that product description has to be done. Okay, I'll do it to the degree I have to, and the rest doesn't get done. And so we haven't had a ton of internal problems. Like, we haven't had employee management problems or anything, despite hiring a few people, not hiring, but hiring as contractors. So we haven't had those problems. But the whole hydra of our organization, in that there's many permutations across everything, many seasons of a given property, many calls to action that go to many different platforms, descriptions across multiple places, promotions that need to be handled in many different ways, that we just kind of try to do what we can. And right now it feels very much like, okay, well, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't know what I'm forgetting, but our word has been to iterate.
Yeah.
And so as long as we feel we're moving in the right direction, then I don't worry too much, or I try not to, about the fact that I know that it's not all done.
How much do you think the stuff that gets left behind hurts, or maybe it doesn't hurt, but I mean, how much do you think it hurts the business?
I don't think it hurts it at all, because I think that we're growing within. Here's what we're not doing: we're not launching a thing that we can't manage at all and then fix. So that's different. What's happening is, so for instance, if we're optimizing product descriptions and covers, there are some books that we're not getting the covers of. To give a really, really nitty-gritty example, when you have a book, there's the image that shows on the site. So Amazon or Kobo or somebody has the book cover image on their site. And then there's another version of that goes inside the books. Mm-hmm. So if we replace the cover on Fat Vampire on Amazon and on Kobo and on Barnes & Noble, we should also be replacing the version that's inside the book, so that when somebody opens it on an iPad or a reader, it has the right cover. But we haven't been doing any of that. Yeah. So that's the sort of thing that, because you got to recompile them all and upload them all. So we've been not handling details that probably should be handled. We've been not fine-tuning calls to action in one place because we're worried about the calls to action in another place. But the worst that's happening there is they're going to a non-ideal place or they're seeing a non-ideal cover. And yeah, that I wish that those things were right, but they're more like I'd rather have the forward progress that comes with the frenzy than to say, okay, well, unless it's perfect, I'm not going to do it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess at a certain point, I don't guess. I know that at a certain point, you just got to almost go with good enough.
You got to ship.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, do you think that the writer, the new author, should they just ship, or should they come and come back and fix it later, or should they, what level of quality should they aim for?
Well, it depends on what we're talking about. So, if we're talking about your book, I don't think there's a good answer to this question because putting out bad work is the worst thing you can do. Yes. Like you can't say the story is, it's got a bunch of errors, but I got to ship. Don't do that. But that said, a lot of people do get in analysis paralysis where they keep worrying about, okay, well, there might be a typo on page 67 and therefore I'd better not ship it. And that just comes from fear. That's just like I'm afraid to be judged. And I don't know that there's a firm answer to that. I think that you need to ship when you're reasonably sure, ideally when you've maybe sent to a few beta readers or something, and then you move on to the next thing. Now, what I'm talking about is a little different. It's more about, it isn't about doing something wrong in a lot of cases. It's about optimizing. So all of our books have product descriptions that work. They all have covers that are pretty good. But that said, those covers can be better in a lot of cases, and the product descriptions in many cases can and should be better. So in this case, it's a matter of, well, we ship, in one case, we ship with a cover that works, and then we go back later and we optimize by saying, what can we do to upgrade the cover, the product description, the categorization, and all of that. So it really is more about steady improvement than about fixing a mistake.
So you guys looking to add like testing for covers and that sort of thing in the future?
Well, the testing is, does it suddenly start selling when it wasn't before?
Okay.
So we're not very scientific, but so far that's been the case. And I think that we've finally developed an eye for, with covers, there's a thing you can do where you look and you say, would this cover work? Yeah. So like, okay, my book is about X, Y, Z, and I found this stock photo and I can combine them in this, this such and such a way with this font. And would that work? And in many cases, the answer is yes. Okay, well, I've read the book, and yeah, I think that cover could work. But that seldom is what will actually sell a book to somebody who doesn't know anything about it. And so, so far with that, we've hit rather than miss.
That's always good. I don't know how well some of my books do because they neither hit nor miss at this point. They're just kind of floating in limbo. So what kind of daily routine are you looking at? Like how does this start for you each day?
Oh, this is so not the time to ask me that question.
Are you off? You off the routine right now?
No, it's just over capacity. So we're at we already produce at a really kind of insane clip. Yeah. And we've increased it by a third just because we're trying to get some stuff off the plate. So we're already producing at a crazy clip, and we just keep adding new projects. Now, in addition to that, we're doing all this optimization. So there's a ton of back-end nitty-gritty metadata sorts of things, like rewriting product descriptions, like getting the autoresponder series done. And so we're to the point where, how sometimes you can't get to something because you're too busy? Yeah. Well, we can't get to that thing because we're one back even further. So I literally have a project that I've been trying to get back to not being able to do. Like I'd like to at least get to that, but I can't because I'm one even further back than that. So things are so nutty right now, and it's winter in Ohio where I live, so I've had to stop and plow the driveway, and that takes a bunch of time. And then my son is in ski club, so I got to deal with that. Not deal with it. I do enjoy it, but it takes time. And so my schedule right now is I seem to work a hell of a lot without feeling like I ever catch up. Now, that said, to answer your question a little bit more specifically, my ideal is that I wake up around 6 a.m. and I write for 4 hours, maybe. And after that, 3 days a week, I go to the gym. We homeschool our kids, so there are some things I do with the kids on certain days. And then the afternoon is for non-creative stuff. So, I mean, I will write like a blog post if necessary during that time. I will write autoresponder copy or something like that. But it's my creative time, my new story, new words time. That's always first thing in the morning, beginning typically around 6, although this morning it was like 4:30. Yeah. So that's been happening.
Yeah, well, okay, have you read Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning yet?
I have not.
Okay, so that will infect your brain and make you start getting up in insane hours. So I recommend against.
I can't shut my brain off.
Yeah, I know.
There's too many details, and so I wake up naturally in the middle of the night. It just happens. Yeah. And if I start thinking about the wrong thing, then forget it. I'm not getting back to sleep.
You might as well keep like the MacBook Air on the pillow next to you.
Yes.
So, all right. So, speaking of that, I mean, how do you recharge from this? Like, where do you find inspiration and refresh yourself so you can get back to this work?
Oh, everything I do is amazing. There's very, very little in my daily work, as crazy as it is, that I'm not really, really excited about and enjoy. Yeah. So the work in itself is very cool, especially since this is our optimizing year. Mm-hmm. And what that basically means is we produced a ton of stuff over the last 2 years, and this is where we finally get to give it the nudge that makes us money. So we've deferred a lot of that income focus. And so yes, it's exhausting right now, but when we can poke at something for 5% effort and it makes us money, that's very gratifying. So now probably a little bit more to your point of I do try to read as much as I can, stuff that's not just ours. I read a lot of nonfiction, self-publishing sorts of things, and I do listen to a few different podcasts. So I try to sort of feed myself back as much as possible, but I need to do a better job with that.
Mine's one of those podcasts, though, right?
Yes.
No, I'm sure. So you're the guy. Okay. So, all right. What about, you guys are making your living full-time with this stuff, and that's a dream for a lot of indie authors and entrepreneurs. But do you have other streams of revenue feeding in besides just the books?
No, it's all Sterling and Stone right now.
Really? That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So for a while, I was juggling 2 lives. And when I say 2 lives, I mean one of them was still entrepreneurial. I don't think I've ever had a real job.
Yeah.
I never have. But I was doing sort of Johnny 1.0 stuff. I was doing online education and marketing and stuff. And I stopped that pretty quick. I stopped that a year and a half ago now. And so everything we do is Sterling and Stone, but Sterling and Stone has a lot of arms out there. So we have 6 distinct imprints, 5 are fiction, 1 is nonfiction. But then even in addition to that, we're doing things like the Fiction Unboxed project. And so it's all Sterling and Stone. It's all words based. It's all publication based for now. But yeah, that's all I do.
So it is one stream of revenue, but it's got a lot of silos then.
Yeah, we like diversification.
Yeah.
Someday we'll be doing movies and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Talk to me when you're ready to do that. I got a lot of film and TV guys.
Do you really?
I
okay.
do,
well,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. They're all mostly Houston based, but I can definitely help you out. So.
We'll have to talk about that when we get together soon.
You got it. Actually, I used to work in that industry. I don't know if I ever told you guys that. I did documentary film work. I used to do stuff for PBS and Discovery and History Channel and that sort of thing. So.
Oh, this is good stuff.
There you go. All right. And that's my free plug for myself and my own show. So, all right. So does it worry you at all, though, that because in a sense, you guys talk a lot about, don't depend on Amazon for your income, don't depend on them for your marketing. But in a sense, you're kind of building your own miniature version of Amazon with Sterling and Stone. Does it ever concern you or worry you that, if something went south with that, your income might go with it?
Oh, no, the opposite. Because it's so diversified that any one of those things could go bad and we'd be fine. And I'm used to living on the edge anyway. I don't mean that to sound like all extreme and rebel.
Yeah.
But that said, living by my wits, I would say. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never had a real job. The closest I came was when I worked in a lab when I was getting my PhD, but whatever. I did that for a year and it wasn't a real job. And so I'm used to rolling with punches, and bad stuff could happen, and we would just keep adapting. Yeah. But we're diversified across many different retailers, and we do print, ebook, and audio. Getting just a little bit into translation now, and that will grow. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, we have fiction and nonfiction, and then big mega things like Fiction Unboxed and like the Summit. And so basically the only way, it's funny because I was thinking about this recently, like what we're trying to do is the only thing that would kill us is if people stopped wanting to be entertained.
Yeah.
And even then we have the nonfiction stuff. So they have to stop wanting to be entertained and stop wanting to learn stuff. And then we're in trouble. So if that ever happens, we're screwed.
I think everybody's pretty much screwed at that point, though. I don't think that's exclusive to you guys.
Yeah, and Amazon going away would really, it would hurt. Like, let's say Amazon said they weren't going to do books, but I don't think it would kill us.
Well, and having, we all have the ability to output directly to the formats, and we all have websites. I mean, that would suck, but the fact that the web is still around would make it, at least plausible to keep going.
If you connect directly with your audience.
Yeah.
I think that there are people who don't do any of that, and they would be in big trouble.
So I have this vision, by the way, when you said living on the edge, of you like with a GoPro hunched over your keyboard,
That would be
flying.
The most scintillating show ever.
Bonus material for Fiction Unboxed. So who are some of your influences in your fiction? That's such a throwaway question, but I still want to know.
No. It because I have them. Okay, and so they're not just influences. They're people whose styles show up. It's that whole good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yeah.
Well, so and we did this with Unicorn Western. And this is a little off topic, but all 9 of those books. I mean, you probably know the story. They follow the story arc and crib references to the 9 individual westerns that we base them on, to the point that there's a chapter in each book called the name of that western. Like the first book has a chapter called High Noon.
Yeah.
And but we firmly believe in that, and so everything, you can see my influences in my writing, and Stephen King is probably the biggest. I like King's earlier work more than his more recent stuff, but. The little parenthetical asides where somebody's inside of their head and kind of thinking something, that owes very much to King. And you see that in our stuff, and you see it in King, and that's not a coincidence. Chuck Palahniuk, I like a lot. His first few books more than the later. Apparently I have a theme here. That casual sort of way that he has of writing, I've played with a little bit, not a ton. So it's a very like, hey, you're sitting right next to me way that I'm going to write, that Palahniuk does very well. Those are the ones that come to mind, but there's a ton. Joseph Heller's Catch-22 is very absurdly, funny in a very bizarre way. And I borrow from that. And of course, we borrow a ton from TV and movies, to the point where we cast characters in our books. And then, how would that actor play that role?
So that brings up a good question. Like, do you hear a particular voice in your head when you write, and whose voice is that?
It depends on who the character is.
So it really is about the character.
Yeah, it is. And we don't cast everybody, but one person we've used a few times is Josh Holloway. So he played Sawyer on Lost.
Yeah.
And whenever you use him, whenever I use him, I think we've only used him like twice. But whenever I use him, that's who I hear when I'm writing. And there are some characters that do have distinctive voices. There was an uncast sea captain in Axis of Aaron. We didn't give him an actor, but I felt he had a Stephen King-ish, like he's got these characters that have that New England way of speaking, and I could hear him. So it just depends on who the character is.
So who is your favorite character?
Oh, that's hard.
That's
You know
like
what?
picking your favorite kid.
It is. You know, I like our women. I'm only cutting it in half, right?
Yeah,
So,
there you go,
but
down 50%.
whoever my favorite character is, it's probably a woman. But I really do like strong female characters. Axis has a few. Unicorn Western has one. Kai in the Beam is a really awesome character. So I don't think I could give you one, but I do like that archetype.
Yeah, the strong feet. The Buffy. You like the Buffy archetype? Is that kind of
I've
because?
never seen Buffy.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, we got to introduce you to a whole new area of pop culture then. So, I haven't read all of the Beam yet. I did read the sort of faux Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, Plug! You're the
Plug.
guy who read Plug.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which I actually enjoyed. And here's a true confession: I got that when I first signed up to your list, just as I started really listening to you guys. Did not realize it was fiction when I got it, so it threw me for a chapter or so. So kudos on that.
There's just as an anecdote, there's a book. I meant to mention it in the book, and we didn't get to it. We'll get to it in season 3. There's a book called Manna, Manna,
Yeah.
that we used as reference material for Robot Proletariat season 2, which we wrapped a little while ago. And I wanted to have them discussing Manna, which isn't written by us; it's somebody else.
Yeah.
And but I didn't get it, and we'll get that in season 3. But that is fiction written as nonfiction, and I thought the exact same thing. And I got through several chapters before going, "What the hell? Why haven't I heard about this?"
Yeah, it threw me. Yeah, because I was going through a period in my life where it was pretty much all I wanted to read was like Malcolm Gladwell and Seth Godin and nonfiction stuff. So that was why it appealed to me. So I jumped right in. But I was glad I read it. I mean, I didn't. It wasn't disappointing, and it is a great opener for the rest of that series. I mean, I'd almost recommend it first to anybody who wanted to get into it. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, we wrote that to try and explain the world to ourselves.
Yeah, that's
and honestly, it's paying dividends now because we're going to be working on the Beam season 3 a couple months. And that's a hard world. Like, there's a lot of established history. There's a timeline that's, an 80-year timeline. And so it's very intimidating to say, let's remember everything about the Beam so I can write season 3.
Yeah.
But we wrote Plugged so that we understood the history of Crossbrace and the Beam and how the lattice worked and all this stuff. And I think that the fact that I've written that, I'm listening to the audiobooks now to catch up, is I'm like, okay, this isn't surprising me. Like, I'm remembering all this because I'm familiar with it the way that you'd be familiar with, like, Wikipedia entries and stuff, like factual things. So, hey.
There you go. You guys need your own wiki.
Yeah, well, we thought about it, and maybe we will someday, of having a Beam World wiki.
I bet if you just mentioned it on air on the podcast, within a week you'd have a just chunky wiki that everyone would envy.
Well, we had that did happen with Dr. Caldwell. He did that, and it wasn't quite ready for prime time. But that's funny you mentioned that because that's exactly what occurred.
So you brought up audiobooks. What is that a boost? I mean, you seeing a lot of new readers come in through audiobooks?
It's so hard to say. I know that it has occurred, which surprises me because I'm not an audiobook guy. I am print first. Well, when I say print, I'm including ebooks, reading it. Mm-hmm. And the idea that somebody is picking up audiobooks separately and then coming in is really surprising. So I don't have any tracking on that or anything, but we do get a steady tick on audiobooks, and it's nice because it's like free money.
Yeah.
Like, once you pay back your narrator, or if you did revenue share, you don't have to pay back your narrator. You're just both receiving profits. It's kind of like, additional revenue stream. And then we get a direct deposit from ACX every month. And it's like, I kind of forgot about that. So it's nice.
Do you see, is it substantial or is it just kind of a trickle?
Oh, no, it's worth noticing.
Yeah.
Even so, I have my own ACX account before I really sort of went all in with Sean and Dave. So the Fat Vampire franchise is just me, but I threw that in with them. So that's a Sterling and Stone property now, and the company gets a percentage of it. But before I did that, it was just all me. So I have my own ACX dashboard that's just Fat Vampire, and I get a statement every month, and it's a few $100, and that's just those books that don't sell particularly well. So no, it's worth doing.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're hitting that 45-minute mark. I promised you we wouldn't go over. So real quick, I mean, is there anything that's going on right now you want to talk up? I know the summit's coming up in April, and that's. Did you fill all those seats yet?
We have 5 left.
5 left. You heard everybody run. And then you got Fiction Unboxed. I just got the email about the audiobook, which
yes,
I pointed out my review so I get my freebie. I almost hate doing that to you guys. Like
I
end up buying it. I end up buying it anyway.
No, the review matters more. It does.
Yeah, it does. It does matter. I need a lot more reviews. Yeah. Anything else you want to just pitch while you got your own airtime, but.
No, I there's too much, honestly, and some of it is still sort of super secret ninja, and and you'll get to hear that more than anybody else because you paid for it.
Looking forward to it too.
But no, just everything is self-publishing podcast. Like that's our hub, and sterlingandstone.net for the blog, and I don't know, cool stuff, cool frontiers.
Cool. All right. Well, everybody listening out there, if you want to learn some of the cool stuff, you can go to Johnny's website, Johnny, Sean, and Dave's website at sterlingandstone.net, and you can catch them on the Self-Publishing Podcast, which you can listen to on their site, selfpublishingpodcast.com, also on iTunes and Stitcher and a whole bunch of other places. And give them lots of stars, and while you're out just handing out stars, you can star my stuff too. So thanks so much, Johnny, for being on the show, man. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are slammed, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's been great.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and we'll see you all next week. Well, how do you like them apples? That was Johnny B. Truant. I don't know why I said that. That's funny. So that was Johnny B. Truant, and it was an honor to have him on the show. I'm incredibly grateful when guys like him come on because, probably the largest chunk of why I started this podcast in the first place was to just give me an excuse to talk to guys like Johnny. People that have sort of been my mentors by proxy, remote control, basically. Giving me advice through my headphones every week and, through their blog posts and that sort of thing. I got into this initially because I wanted to grow as an author. I wanted to build a business around the stuff I was creating. Not just my fiction, but, the whole authority package. I wanted to help more people. I was doing a little bit of, consulting and coaching on the side and helping people that, friends mostly, but even just clients, some of my clients for my creative business and, the people I encountered in the industry. And I really enjoyed that. And I decided, there's a way to make a living doing something I love. And that's what started the whole thing. So, more than a year ago, I start listening to Johnny and the guys, and it changed a lot about what I do, how I perceive my business. And that's the power of things, like content like this, content like podcasts and blog posts. Someone speaks with authority and they change someone's life. And that is, I can't think of a better career. I can't think of a better way to spend your life, than doing something that, you feel passionate about, that propels you and compels you, and, getting your ideas out there, but also helping other people to build the same sort of business. That's just, a dream come true for me. So I love working with people to get into this business, whether you want to be an author or you want to be a coach or consultant or, a keynote speaker or anything that, any sort of authority business where you would use your expertise to make a living and build a dream career. I love working with folks like you. So you should check me out. Come on to my website at kevintomlinson.com. And if you go to kevintomlinson.com/podcast, you can leave me a question. Now, you may have noticed I've shifted from purely being about story on this podcast to being more focused. I want to focus more on authority businesses. I want to focus on helping people build the kind of careers and lives that they can really enjoy, that they can really feel passionate about. So if you have a question about how to become an author, about how to, get into an authority business, or you just want to say hello, go to my website, kevintumlinson.com/podcast, where you can leave me a voicemail from the little tab on the right. You can also call me at 281-809-WORD. That's 281-809-9673, where you can leave me a voicemail, which I'll play on the air if you want, and if you don't want, just say so. But I answer all questions. You can also email me from my website. And while you're there, go click around. I mean, I make the whole thing accessible. You can, check out my services if you want. The consulting is there, as well as I do some public speaking. And so if you ever want me to, keynote an event for you or something, just let me know. And I also have my books for sale. Speaking of publishing empires, you can pick up some of my fiction there. I'm working on a few nonfiction pieces that are going up. And, if you follow me with Nick Thacker at the Self-Publishing Answers podcast, we're working on a few things that are going to be pretty groovy. So stay tuned. You should definitely tune in for that, by the way. If you're interested in being an author at all, that's definitely an avenue I would explore. So that's pretty much it. Again, thank you to those who have checked out the Patreon campaign. You can learn more about that at patreon.com/Kevin Tumlinson, or go to kevintumlinson.com and click Fund Me, and that'll take you straight there. If you haven't already, join the tribe. Get on the website and sign up. There are opt-in boxes. You can't avoid them. I mean, they're everywhere on the site. So go sign up to the mailing list. And if you do that, first of all, you get something free. Depending on who you are, there's all kinds of different options for that freebie. If you are listening to this podcast, I kind of just assume you're mostly into the idea of building an authority business. So there's a PDF that is the 6 ways to build your authority business with a book, or use a book to build your authority business. I got the title wrong, but you'll see it there. It's got a guy with a whole bunch of guys standing there, and one guy's got no pants on, so which is pretty indicative of my brand. But if you like fiction, I offer the first book in the Sawyer Jackson series for absolutely free as well. So you can sign up, get both. You can do whatever you want to do. So sign up. You get updates on newest podcast episodes, new blog posts, new giveaways right now this very week, right up until March 9th. I draw on March 9th, but the entries have to stop on the 8th. But I am drawing from my mailing list. Anyone who's on my mailing list before March 9th is entered for a chance to win a free Amazon Kindle Fire HD6, which is pretty cool. I'm really excited about it. So definitely go check that out. Get on the list. And I'm opening this to anyone who's on the list. So past, present, or future, right up until midnight on March 8th, Sunday, March 8th. That's Central Standard Time. So go sign up, and that's all it takes. Go. Now, there may be some restrictions on where this can go. If you live in an area, a country or something that Amazon can't send this to, or it's illegal to have it, or, whatever, I apologize. I have no control over that. We'll work out something for you if you win. I mean, I would love to be able to ship this anywhere in the world, but there are limitations that might prevent that. But go enter, and we'll work something out if you win. So looking forward to giving that away. That's it's kind of a cool little piece of tech. I've got things like it. I don't have that exact item, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it if you once you get it. I can't wait to see how it works. I know how it works. I've got something similar, but so there's that going on. And otherwise, I'm just sitting here waiting for you guys to call and leave me some voicemails or send me some emails. I'd love to read them on air. So talk to me about anything. Thank you so much for tuning in every week. I do this for you, because of you. So it's a blast to get to sit here every week and talk to you. So next week I have, let me check that. Because what I've got is a whole bunch of interviews already lined up. I've already recorded several. And some upcoming episodes are going to be pretty cool. So next week I have Tara Jacobson, who is she's a marketing genius. And excuse me, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to cough in your ear. I tried to hit the button and it didn't work. But she's going to talk to us about how to market an authority business. And she's got some cool tips. So if you're into this, you're going to really want to tune into that. She's brilliant. I did a session with her, a coaching session with her, and she really kind of helped me figure some things out. After that, we've got Francesca Hoagie, who you may know from Survivor. She was actually on two seasons of Survivor, and on both seasons she got voted out first. So she went from that though and built a career as a coach, and she's doing great, and she's fantastic. You're gonna love that interview. And then after that, I have Joseph Michael, who you may know as the Scrivener coach, and that's also a great interview. He talks about Scrivener a little, but I really wanted to focus on his newest venture, which is helping people build courses online. He's teaching people how to build businesses around course development. So all great interviews, fantastic, fun interviews. Those are all coming up over the next 3 weeks, so make sure you're tuning in. Get on that mailing list at kevintumlinson.com/podcast so you can be updated whenever anything new comes through. And if you got ideas for people who are topics, let me know. Send me an email, send me a voicemail. I've got a commitment this year to 52 episodes total. I mean, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to knock those out. So plenty of people coming up. I got lots of people on the calendar for interviews too. So it's going to be a good year for the Wordslinger podcast. So, all right. Take care of yourselves, and I will check in with you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Wordslinger.